Yes, we are live on this Sunday morning, and welcome to the start of the real season. The Montreal Canadiens shocked the National Hockey League by being the 16th and final team to qualify for the NHL postseason, and we are here and ready for it. And the playoff party officially begins. And guess what? Everybody's invited to the playoff party live from the U.S. Capitol Monday night at 7 for Game 1. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk X factors on both sides of the blue line here. Washington's X factor, Montreal's X factor. We'll break down the goaltending assignments. So we're going to do this in two phases. We're going to be back here tomorrow, Sunday morning, live at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we are one sleep away on Sunday anyway from Game 1 of the NHL playoffs that open up on two fronts today. We'll also hype up some other series that we're very much ready for, in particular the Battle of Ontario that kicks off tonight, and it looks like Brady Tkachuk is green light go, ready for Game 1. Live from the nation's capital this morning, my partner in crime is Marco D'Amico, the man behind the Ivan Demidov story from RG Media, live on this Saturday morning. Marco, good morning, and welcome to the start of the NHL playoffs. How's it going, brother?
Good morning, everybody. It's going well. It's springtime hockey in Canada. I think this is the best time of the year, so I think everybody's pretty pumped.
No kidding. It's a beautiful day. It's warmer in Montreal today. It's gray because every other day in April has more or less been gray, and it's a gray day today, but it's going to be 20 degrees. Playoffs are in the air, and we are ready for it. Don't forget, as always, hit that like button, smash it. If you do believe the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, and we always appreciate this, Mr. Niles throwing in the coffee tip jar this morning. Good morning. People are amplified. Marco, what's your vibe? Being as active as you are on X social media, plugged into Habs Nation, obviously, dialogues, conversations back and forth with yesterday's video that was a smash home run. Habs Nation very much enthralled in what's to come this summer. What's the vibe check from your side of the table when it comes to how Hab fans, I mean, Mr. Niles here is dropping profane language. Everyone seems to be a little bit more amplified today. Is that your read?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's well-deserved. And you see a team that not many people saw making the playoffs, and doing so without arguably their best offensive piece in Ivan Demidov in this rebuild, only joining towards the end. They have prospects. Laval clinched first in the entire AHL yesterday, winning the Kilpatrick Trophy. So there's a lot still coming up. And they have draft capital, which is the video we talked about yesterday. They have those 2 first-round picks, and they're both projected to be in the middle of the first round, unless the Canadiens go on a run or the Calgary Flames win the draft lottery. So there's valuable assets moving forward, and I think that's the fun. It's like this is all house money, and you have draft picks and prospects galore to make trades if you want to improve at a specific position. Now, I'm not saying forget the rebuild and just buy. But if there's an age-appropriate player that can fit into a specific position of need, then sacrificing one of the 2 first-round picks this summer, and we'll get into that in the summer. But when you're going into these playoffs, it's exciting because you just want to see how this young core can match up against the best in the NHL.
What's that over your right shoulder? Is that a TV embedded into the wall, or is that a mirror?
That's a TV embedded into the wall.
Damn, that's sick. I mean, I love the flush. I like how flush it is with the. I'm glad you answered because that's what I was hoping for. Good morning, Ryerson. No, I'm not day drinking. It's 9:33 in the morning on Saturday. I mean, I am drinking. I am drinking, but it's a hot beverage.
I'm not gonna lie. I may have had a little bit of Sambuca in my espresso, but that's it.
Listen, there's no judging. If it gets you fired up or ready to go, Naz, what is going on? The predictions flying in. Habs in 7, you got to believe. Vinny Red, Paul, good morning. Ryerson, proud members of the Shaun Starr show. Good morning, Marco. Montreal's new superstar. Marco, can you handle all this newfound fame and adoration coming down from various, whether it's here in the live chat, whether it's on Twitter, Marco's turning into a superstar here. Can you handle the buzz, Marco?
Honestly, I think my keyboard is more of a popular topic nowadays than me. So I'm not sweating it at all. Just to be completely transparent, I don't think it's about me. It's really been fun to see the excitement of Canadiens fans and seeing all of them kind of reach out and show their passion, I
Yeah.
think that's the best part about it all. So I'm just fired up to be part of the process.
Let's go. Lots to get to this morning. So congratulations. I mean, this is the kind of vibe I feel, like Kevin Garcia should have champagne in that mug. Congratulations, Habs. I mean, it truly is. It is a congratulations kind of moment. And it's not to say that you're satisfied. No one's suggesting that anybody's satisfied. Once you punch your ticket to the dance, I am a believer that anything more or less can be achieved, especially if you internally believe that you can shock the world. So let's get into some of the nitty gritty here. Before we get into the series prediction, which we're probably going to do tomorrow on Sunday for our live show. But if you're unaware, the schedule, as we found out early, we know it opens up in Washington on game one. So it goes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday. So that's your 4 games. Montreal will host Friday and Sunday. Quick reaction to the fact that the Montreal Canadiens are not playing a Saturday night game. And the reason I ask you this question is I mentioned to you before, the Bell Center is having a season. From the Four Nations Showcase event and how much everybody loved it, to the fact that the Canadiens at home have basically been playing do or die games, to be dramatic, for the better part since the Four Nations break. And people continue to talk about, in a very flattering way, the Bell Center. Are you surprised that the National Hockey League didn't seize the moment and say, you know what? Let's give Canada a Saturday night at the Bell Center to give people a taste on what it's really like here.
No, I'm not surprised in the slightest. In fact, we messaged each other even before the Canadiens clinched, and I said that they wouldn't get the Saturday because the Battle of Ontario was clinched, and they were obviously going to give that the Saturday because I without being disrespectful to the Ottawa Senators or Toronto Maple Leafs fan base, they need all the love they can get on a Saturday night because neither barn can compare to the Bell Center, and I've been to both, so. That keyboard does have a life of its own. That's why it's not here right now. To me, I think it makes sense. I think that, when you get a Battle of Ontario, the ratings could be excessively high. And when you're kind of trying to map out where things can go in terms of a schedule, the Bell Center is going to be rocking on a Sunday, even if the game were to start at 9 p.m. Like, let's call a spade here. The Montreal is a hockey town. It's insane. But when it comes to Toronto, well, or even when we get back to, you do the whole cycle back, and when we get to Ottawa, they need those Saturday night games because that's going to bring more attention, that's going to bring more buzz and potentially more dollars when it comes to that, because TVA Sport is already handling all of the Canadiens games to begin with anyway. So exactly. It's a little bit of a different vibe.
Let's start here with Paul. Member of the Shaun Starr Show. You too can join the community, $2.99 a month, and cancel anytime. You get early access to all the videos we put out. Paul wonders the line we expect to get the task of shutting down the Capitals' top line. And when we go over it, right? Like when you look at the top 5 scorers for both teams, Dylan Strome, 81 points. Ovechkin, marvelous season, over 40 goals, clearly, 72 points. Protas, hurt, 66 points. What version of PLD are we going to see through maybe as many as 7 games? 65 points. Tom Wilson, the long tenured, he's been in Washington for 12 seasons, had another strong year, 64 points. The big horses for the Canadiens, as we know, well documented on this channel, right? Suzuki, 30 goals, 89 points. Cole Caulfield, a very, I don't want to say quiet, but Cole Caulfield hit 77 points. Lane Hutson hit 66. Slafkovsky improved on a season from a year ago, finishes with 51. And Brendan Gallagher finishes with 38 points. So those are the horses that are going to do the lifting offensively, or at least you hope. Marco, walk us through the defensive struggle here and how much of this is going to be on Christian Dvorak, Josh Anderson, and Jake Evans to be strong in goal prevention. Walk us through how you see the Montreal Canadiens playing tight defense and minimizing the damage that the Capitals' big horses could potentially do here.
Yeah, I mean, just one thing. Caulfield had 70 points. If he had 77, that would have been. Really
I thought I said 70. Sorry. Yeah.
It's all good. Whatever line Christian Dvorak is going to be on will naturally be the shutdown line. The thing is, the Canadiens have two. I would, without being disrespectful here, the Canadiens have 2 fourth lines on a contending team right now in Yeah, I know. I don't have my rising desk here, so I have to sit down. So when it comes to the way that they're built, those are two shutdown lines, in my opinion. You could have Jake Evans and Joel Armia be a shutdown duo with Emil Heineman on their wing and also do some damage. I thought Emil Heineman had some juice to his game in that final season game. And, if he had better luck, he'd have a couple more goals this season. So many posts that he's hit, but that shot is so dangerous. And then you're going to have, Dvorak, Gallagher, and Josh Anderson. I think that's going to be another shutdown line. And I wouldn't even be surprised if that line went up against whatever line Tom Wilson's on. So you could have a direct Wilson-Anderson matchup whenever you can. So I think there's going to be two shutdown lines, which, works out well because I feel like the Washington Capitals have two legitimate offensive lines that could be a first line on any given team in the playoffs. So I think that matches up quite well. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what Dylan Strome does in the playoffs because, he's been good, but can he be as good as he was? Like we're talking a point per game center here. Can he be as good as that in the playoffs? And I find that Dylan Strome in the seasons that I've seen isn't necessarily up to the task when the games get a little bit overly physical. And that's why I think that that Dvorak line will do well against someone like Dylan Strome, because again, Dylan Strome is, he's been very good, but you're going to have to deal with layers of depth. And I think that's the key here is that I wouldn't even be surprised if Martin St. Louis on the road doesn't even mind matching his Suzuki line against their top line and seeing what happens.
Let's put this comment up on the board before we get to some X factors. I want to start with the Washington Capitals X factor, but from Scotian Wood Turning. Are the Canadiens going to play Sam Montembeault every single game, or will they take a chance on Jakub Dobeš in order to give Monty a night off of rest? I find this question quite peculiar because, correct me if I'm wrong here,
goalie rest.
Bro, I'm shocked at the question. I mean, it's the playoffs. It's not literally do or die. If you lose, you will still live and move on, and we'll see you next year. But in the case of being dramatic here, I mean, no, you ride your horses until you run them into the ground. I mean, the world in which Jakub Dobeš plays a game or starts a game is Sam Montembeault gives up four muffins in the first two games of the series, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's got the yips maybe. I mean, Marco, that's the hypothetical world in my mind anyway. 4 muffins in 2 games and no confidence.
Even on a hypothetical standpoint, having seen the season that Martin St. Louis just coached, he goes back to the same well over and over again. That it'd be with Montembeault, who they overplayed. What did he play this year? Almost 60 games.
Yeah, most of his career.
Yeah, exactly. By a long shot. So he's fried. It's the reason he wasn't at the optional skate yesterday. But 62 games in the NHL as a number 1 in the NHL, right? Like that's a 50% increase. He only played 41 the year prior. So I understand the concept of resting, but if they felt like resting him, it would have happened during the season. At this point, with 4 days off, I don't see them needing a rest. And to be completely frank with you, if you need a rest in the playoffs, then you're going to lose your spot.
100%. Well stated. Kevin Garcia, question for everyone. With all these young stars, whose jersey would you buy? I mean, in order. I mean, in order, it begins with 93, and then it goes to 48, and then lock me in final answer. Give me 13. Those are the 3 jerseys I would, if I were a young fan, and my parents asked me, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday?" Because I'm a Canadiens fan. I would want a 93 jersey first.
I would hold off on 93 just because it'll probably be 91 next year.
Someone told me, actually, it's funny you bring that up. Friday morning, somebody told me that he's going to change his number. And then I'm like, oh, I hadn't heard that. I'm like, my buddy is like, I thought he chose 93. Was Demidov given 93 or did he choose 93?
Both. Like he was given options. And he just went with 93. He didn't want to ruffle any feathers. Okay. But Oliver Kapanen was asked the question. He's like, I don't care. I was just given 91 because I wore it in Europe when I played in Sweden. And the other, but when he played internationally, he wore 27. 27 is available. So if he slides 91 to 27, 91 becomes available for Demidov in the summer. The only reason he couldn't give his 91 is because there's a rule that states that you cannot give your number to an incoming rookie. But the only exception to that rule is if there is a veteran that gets traded. Then at that point, that veteran could request his number, and then a Rolex is exchanged.
I like the 93 if he wants to go to 91, if that makes him more comfortable.
I think this is an opportunity for Anakin Slade to rewrite his Feels Like 93 and make it specifically about Demidov.
Wow.
I'm not his agent. I'm not his representation, but I feel like this is an opportunity for you.
I get it. But I don't know. Can he turn his love on his? Can he turn his back on his love of the Montreal Expos and rewrite it in a thematic way for the Montreal Canadiens? I mean, if he wants to make that sweet YouTube money, because that video on his YouTube channel is like crazy. It does crazy numbers, right?
Every time the Canadiens in the playoffs, and I feel like with this rebuild and completely new players on the team, now is a good time to redo it.
So let's talk a little X factors, if you don't mind. When I look at the Washington Capitals side, Alexander Ovechkin was basically playing to like a 92, 93 point pace over a full 82 game season. And obviously, I mean, it is insane. And had he done that, right, we're talking about the most productive season by a 39-year-old in the history of the National Hockey League. So he breaks the all-time goals record, obviously, against the New York Islanders in early April. And he's been pretty much a beast ever since he broke the record on the 6th of April. He did sit out to get some rest for the NHL playoffs, but how much more does Alexander Ovechkin have in the tank? He says he's not retiring. Speaking of being gifted Rolexes, that was nice from Evgeny Malkin and Sidney Crosby. The most casual reaction to a Rolex gift I think I've ever seen, but he is Ovechkin. He does have a lot of money. I'm sure, he has a few in his collection. So walk me through the Alexander Ovechkin X factor for the Capitals. How dangerous? How much do you think he has left in order to push his team over the line in this first round series?
I think it's a tough question to ask because no one really truly knows where he's at from a physical perspective, right? Like he came back from a broken leg, but no one really comes back from a broken leg that early. I think he played through it so that he could break the record this year. So what does that do at this junction? The only benefit I think he's had is he's basically played one game in the last 10 days.
Yeah.
Right. So like he's going to be able to kind of relax, and he has. So he's going to come into that series refreshed. But then what's the mindset for the Washington Capitals? Like the whole team, we spoke to 3 or 4 other players like Lars Eller, John Carlson, everyone was geared, even Dylan Strome, everyone was geared towards one thing. And when it was clear that they were going to make the playoffs, it was, hey, this guy needs to get his that goal, that 895th goal. And everyone was pushing towards that. So what happens when that goes away? Like there's a sense of deflation to a certain degree. I'm not saying that they're going to come out weak against the Canadiens, but there is a psyche element to it. Like how do you refocus after that when the whole season was geared towards one thing, So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see if they move things around. But the thing with the Washington Capitals is they just have a ridiculous amount of depth. And I think that's the key, right? Like we're talking about Ovechkin, Dylan Strome, Tom Wilson. We haven't even begun to talk about Connor McMichael. We haven't even begun to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois in detail. We haven't even begun to talk about Ryan Leonard, who also joined them late in the season and is, in my opinion, going to be a dynamic power forward. So there's a chance that a lot of these guys become the unsung heroes for the Washington Capitals. And then, there are guys further down the lineup like Jim Dowd that could be, a pain for the Canadiens as well.
Yep.
I'm not, like I said, I think that in terms of goalies, that's going to be very interesting. Like, where is Logan Thompson in terms of health? Because he has been injured week to week.
So can I stop you there? Can we get into injuries then before we get into the matchups about whether it's Protas, Chychrun, Logan Thompson? What do you know about? We know the Canadiens are obviously relatively healthy, and as you reported yesterday on Twitter, optional skate, the usual characters were involved. Nick Suzuki was an observer watching. Canadiens more or less, compared to the Capitals anyway, what do we know about the potential availability of Thompson? Let's start there and move down the list, and how important some of these injuries are to the Canadiens' potential success here.
Yeah, I think all of them are going to be available. I think they allowed themselves the rest just because.
Yep.
But I think that when you look at a guy like Thompson, it was a lower body injury. The Canadiens are going to have to stretch him. And by stretch him, I mean they're going to have to use their passing game to a point where they're going to have to make him move laterally. And I think at that point, because there's still something bothering him, I don't think that you can go week to week and then be immediately ready the week after. When you say week to week, it's because there's 2-3 weeks away. But when the playoffs start, day to day means you're playing. Week to week means you're playing the next game. So it's always that kind of style. I just feel like when you look at, someone like Thompson has that playoff experience, was on a cup winning team, knows what he needs to do. Wasn't necessarily the guy to ride them though to the playoff, to the promised land. And I think that's the key difference. So like now you have the whole thing on you. And if we look back to last year, for example, Connor Hellebuck won the Vezina and the Jennings last year and then proceeded to be made fun of by the Colorado Avalanche, if I remember correctly, absolutely, attacking them. And, I think he let in like 4 goals almost every game. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a situation like that, like it's a significant difference when it comes to playoff hockey and regular season hockey. And I think a guy like Logan Thompson, in the games that I've seen, when distracted, and already he's nursing an injury, but when distracted, nowhere near as efficient. And the Canadiens have a certain Brendan Gallagher who loves to be a distraction in the playoffs. And, I feel like Brendan Gallagher's game will get a little bit more leniency in the playoffs when it comes to calls and whatnot. And I think that's where he can be the most effective, is going to be that net front presence, especially on the second power play wave. If they keep him there, I feel like that's a perfect place for him to be.
We'll get into the Canadiens here in a second. Lior, thanks for the comment. How come you, Connor, Simon, don't get holidays like Easter Friday or Monday off? I was surprised to hear you guys on the radio yesterday, but I was just a little bit curious. So let me get into that for a second. The fact that the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, and I'm very fortunate in the sense that, yes, it is what I do for work, and it is my career, but days like Friday, I will be at work on Monday morning. Days like these ones coming up, I don't think of it as work. It's fun. I get to go in, I get to talk about the Canadiens, I get to react to the Canadiens like I'm doing here with Marco, anticipating what we think we're going to see, trying to break it down, get in the weeds a little bit, and then you get to go on and talk to people and react with the public. It's an awesome career. It's a super fun job to have. I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And get to come here and do it again with Marco D'Amico and break it down even further. And it's, for me, I love interacting with the public. I love seeing what the fan on the street has to say and having healthy and encouraging healthy debate. I think, I've been trying to preach that here for a while since the launching of the show in November, to be able to create an environment for Montreal Canadian fans that can come to a spot, listen to good, engaging, quasi-intelligent discussion, and jump into the debate without the fear of saying something wrong, or I do not want to create an echo chamber environment. I do not want it to be just on replay, on repeat. I want Marco to have a different opinion than mine. I want Lior to have a different opinion than both of us, where we can have a healthy exchanging of ideas. So that's the long way of answering that question. Drew wonders whether or not we should bring in Grant McCagg. Grant McCagg works for Sick Media and the Sick Podcast Network. That would be like asking, I don't know, Ron McLean from the CBC to come on TSN's That Hockey. It doesn't really kind of work that way. Let's get into the Montreal Canadiens here. Montreal has been playing must-win hockey for the second half of the season. As a matter of fact, when we get into the weeds on it, since January 1st, Montreal has earned 54 points. That's 11th overall in hockey. Now, the Canadiens had multiple chances to clinch a playoff spot, but ultimately they needed their last game to get it done when they beat the Carolina Hurricanes on Wednesday to more or less lock this down. It's Montreal's first berth into the playoffs since the 2021 season. Lots of people in the chat feeling the vibes of the 2010 season. Marco, when you look at this Canadiens roster, I think this is a more credible playoff berth. I think the long play here seems more authentic than Yaroslav Halak allowing 3 goals in the last 3 games of that series when they were down 3-1 to win in Game 7. Do
Yeah.
you see any similarities? Do you have that feeling internally? 2025 Habs against Caps versus 2010 Canadiens against Ovechkin's Capitals.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
The
same.
only thing I see similar is the crest. That's basically it. When you
Yeah.
look at the 2010 Montreal Canadiens, you had Scott Gomez, you had Mike Camilleri, you had Brian Giunta, you had Thomas Plekanec, you had Andrei Markov, Roman Hamrlik, Yaroslav
Yeah.
Spacek, right? Like that was a very, very veteran-heavy team.
Yeah.
In fact, I feel like if I'm not mistaken, the only rookie to play in that series was a call-up of PK Subban after like game 2 or 3.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So,
Correct.
very, very veteran team, a team that was put together in the centennial season so that the Canadiens wouldn't necessarily look bad after letting so many people go in the summer of 2009. So to me, this isn't the same. And in the same sense, it isn't the same because I felt like the Canadiens team in 2010 had one guy basically pull them out in the sense of a guy like Yaroslav Halak, but then they got otherworldly scoring from Mike Camilleri. I mean, I think, what did he have? 13 goals in those playoff series.
Like, and remember, insane. Roman Hamrlik was an impenetrable wall in front of Halak.
Well, Hamrlik and Spacek, that second pair.
Dude, they were so good.
If the Canadiens had, and I mean no offense when I say this, but if the Canadiens went into this playoffs with the equivalent of Hutson Goulet on their first pair, and then the equivalent of a Hamrlik Spacek, I would give this series to Montreal. That's how I feel. But I just don't feel like the Canadiens have the veteran defensive structure throughout their lineup to be able to match up. Because when you look at the Washington Capitals from 2010, again, like they may not have Nick Backstrom anymore. Yeah. They may not have Mike Green at the time, but they do have John Carlson and Jakob Chychrun, right?
Yeah.
They do have a much deeper center line, in my honest opinion, now than they did then. And they're a more veteran-heavy team. Like Tom Wilson's a vet. Alex Ovechkin, is a big-time vet. But you have guys that have been around the block, and it seems like the only young player on their team right now, their only really, really young player on their team right now is Ryan Leonard. Everybody else has been playing in the NHL for at least 2 seasons. The Montreal Canadiens are the total opposite of that. Now, that being said, I feel like the Montreal Canadiens are being counted out far less this time around than they were in 2010. And the reason for that is because youth have, like we've seen it, right? Nobody expected Nick Suzuki at the age of 21 to lead the Canadiens in scoring on the route to a Stanley Cup final. Mm-hmm. And he did that at 21. What's he going to do now with a little bit of rest, right? Yep. Could he surpass himself? Could he surprise, right? Like we think about the play-in in 2019 where the Canadiens upset Pittsburgh, who was, one of the top teams in the league that year, and managed to make it so that they could play the Philadelphia Flyers in the first round of the 2019 playoffs. Like it's the same concept. Cole Caulfield coming out of basically nowhere and playing the last 10 games of the season and then joining the Canadiens in the playoffs and being a difference maker. The same applies. So this is why I've always been saying Ivan Demidov in this series is a complete wild card. If Martin St. Louis decides to use him like he should, and I'm not going to pretend like I know better than the coach, but when you have that kind of talent in this kind of a setting, you have to use him. Don't make a Roman Rottenberg of yourself. Use him. And so
I want to get into Slafkovsky and Demidov's, how we think they're going to be used, how we want them to be used. I promise you, we will get into that here.
I just feel like when you have guys like that are unproven in the playoffs, they have the opportunity to prove and go above expectation and surprise. Yep. And I feel like there is more of a potential this time around for an upset than there was in 2010. Now, whether that happens is a completely different story. Samuel Montembeault will have to stand on his head, akin to how Yaroslav Halak did in 2010. My honest opinion.
Let's give a quick shout out here before we move on to the Canadiens angle to Silver Paw Dog, their Everything Pet Warehouse sale event where you can save up to 80% off on everything you need for your cat or your dog. High-end treats, high-end raincoats, sweaters, collars, you name it, in various makes, models, and colors. This is the creme de la creme, and we're saving up to 80% off. So you know that high-end bed, and I'm guilty of it just as much as you are, spoiling our pets, because after all, they are very much like and a part of our family in a really big way. And Silver Paw Dog, that you can find at Costco, at Walmart, this is an authority in the pet space in a variety of ways. And it's an opportunity to save money, keep it in your pocket. And also, as you see here, they've partnered with SPCA West. So part of the proceeds for their Everything Pet Warehouse sale event at Gallery Day Source, 3237 Sources Boulevard, goes from May 2nd to May 4th. And so you only have those days, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, from 10 to 3 p.m. And through the Shaun Starr Show, you have a chance to win $200. It's really simple. Just enter your name, enter your email address, click this button. Yes, I want a chance to win $200, and boom, you are done. We make it easy, and we only partner with the best of the best at the Shaun Starr Show. So let's get into some of the X factors on the Montreal Canadiens side. In the head-to-head battle, right? Montreal and Washington met 3 times this season. The last was January 10th. That was the only game in this series that Montreal won. It was an overtime game. The Canadiens pulled out in a 3-2 final. The Capitals won the other 2, and they outscored Montreal by a margin of 12-8 in those 2 wins. Couple of names that had standout performances. Protas had a very 2-game sample size. Tom Wilson, he had 4 points. Protas had 4 points. Alexander Ovechkin scored on each of his 2 shots he took in his 2 games after missing the game in January. On the Montreal side, Cole Caulfield had 5 points in 3 games, Nick Suzuki being the only other player with more than 1, as Montreal's top line was the only one to make noise. Can the Montreal Canadiens be competitive in this series if they have the top line going and the 3 other lines are on the struggle bus? How do you feel about their chances if it is the top line that is required to do the heavy lifting? Let's start there.
Then it'll be very easy for the Washington Capitals to match up against them. And this is why I speak of the importance of Hutson and Demidov in this series.
Yes.
If the Canadiens think they're going to win this series with one team going, they're going to lose in 4. My honest opinion. The Washington Capitals have a very good shutdown ability. It's going to be a trench war just to be able to get to the high danger areas in front of Logan Thompson. Once they get there, we'll see what Logan Thompson can do, but you're going to have to sacrifice a lot to get there. And if everyone's expecting the top line to be the one to do it the whole time, it's going to be a little difficult, especially with the Washington Capitals having last change in the first 2 games. That's an easy way to go and grab momentum. So I don't think so. I think the Montreal Canadiens cannot play to the same strategy that they used during the regular season. They cannot. And the reason for that is because when you get to the playoffs, you're playing 7 games against the same team. Matchups become even more difficult to overcome. They're playing their best against you. They're hacking you down. They're wearing you down. You can't possibly depend on Nick Suzuki to save you throughout the entirety of that time. What you have to do is you have to spread the wealth. What you have to do is get secondary scoring. And I feel like this is where the importance is going to come to the T, in the sense that when you're looking at that, like, for example, that power play wave, that first power play wave is going to be ever more important. Special teams ever more important. I think the Canadiens, in terms of penalty kill, I think the Canadiens are fine, right? I think they have the pieces there with Cooley and Savard and Matheson, and then at forward, Jake Evans and Yoel Armia, Christian Dvorak, Nick Suzuki, etc. Like they're fine, but they're special teams when it comes to scoring goals. That is going to be the difference between them making it a series and this being quick. And so we've talked about this, but at 5-on-5, if they overuse that top line too much, it won't bode well. He's going to have to. Martin said he's going to have to trust that second line.
I think you raise a lot of good points, and it's hard to see this team being so reliant on the top line. And so that brings us to MSL. And again, as Marco alluded to earlier, I would join Marco's camp, but and I've admitted this many times, I'm not smart enough to run the Montreal Canadiens. I never pretend to be smart enough to run the Montreal Canadiens, and I'm not here to tell you this is what I would do. But I'm also a big buyer of scared money don't make money. Are the Montreal Canadiens going to be scared to be aggressive with Hutson and Demidov? And I don't mean that in the actual literal definition of being scared. Scared to me is, in hockey speak, is conservative. I will use conservative in an approach with Hutson and Demidov. Jeff O'Neill, the former NHLer, current panelist on TSN, breaking down the NHL playoffs last night, talking about Ivan Demidov. And Jeff O'Neill, by the way, has the Leafs going the whole way. And by going the whole way, I mean he's got them winning the Stanley Cup, right?
I'm shocked.
And I'm curious to get your take, because outside of the Canadiens series, the series I am most looking forward to, and I'm very excited for tonight, is the start of the Battle of Ontario. I'm very anxious to see how this unfolds. But in the meantime,
I just don't think I don't think Toronto could win that series against Ottawa. I think whatever team comes out of that Florida series is going to the Eastern Conference Final.
I got, for the record, if you want to join our free hockey pool, because a lot of you asked for this when the playoffs were in sight. And so we just set it up, pretty simple stuff. NHL bracket pool. We're going to give away prizes for the top 3 finishers, golf stuff, merch. And so we've got prizes for our participants, and you can sign up there with the link in the bracket challenge. And full disclosure, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup. I really like this team. And so that's my pick. You can join the bracket and have some fun there. So let's take it back to the Demidov, right? Jeff O'Neill was fawning over Demidov. He believes he has the ego, the confidence to go into a playoff series, and the internal belief that he can excel regardless of the environment, regardless of the context. Regular season debut, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. Jeff O'Neill is a big believer in Ivan Demidov. I believe the Canadiens believe in Ivan Demidov. Marco, do they believe in him now? Do they believe in him today? Do they believe in him Monday night? So walk me through what the path you see them using him in. Conservative, aggressive, a hybrid. Which way do you think it's likely to fall?
I don't know. I've never seen Martin St. Louis coach a playoff game. So I can't predict. And, that's part of the wild card. You don't know what any of these people are going to do in those specific roles on or off the ice. And so, is Martin St. Louis going to go, excuse my language, balls to the walls with his skilled players, or is he going to try and feel it out and play a softer game? Seeing the way the Canadiens have played over the last week, I'd be more apt to think that he's going to play it safe at first and then deploy based on that. So if Ivan Demidov plays 10 to 12 minutes game 1, don't be surprised, in my honest opinion. If he plays more, gravy, but don't be surprised if it's just that, especially with the last change and especially with what I feel is a lack of confidence in Patrick Laine's 5-on-5 play.
Oof. It's a concern. It's a concern.
Yeah, I personally don't see it. I think that if the Canadiens' defense could be a little bit more aggressive along the walls, Patrick Laine's giveaways would be less of a big deal because most of them come along the boards.
Yeah.
And that's something we're going to talk about when it comes to what they need to do, because the Washington Capitals absolutely love to use the boards as a springboard to get the puck out at center and start going the other way for the counterattack. If the Canadiens can be aggressive along the wall and cut that off, they're going to be very successful against the Washington Capitals. So I wouldn't worry about that whatsoever. Where I think you have to worry about Patrick Laine is going to be that second effort. And I think that's the key here. He's had games where that second effort was there. He was physical. He was hard to get the puck away from. And I really like the chemistry that he was building with a guy like Ivan Demidov. So I would give them the ice. Right? If the Canadiens are defending a lead, that's a different story. But if it's a 0-0 game or it's a tie game or they're losing by 1 and you need a goal, that second line should be rotating in at the same amount of reps as the first or third line. I would hope that the Canadiens don't overplay the Dvorak line because he deems them safe, despite them analytically being caved in the last 5 games of the season.
But what makes you I believe he's probably going to do that. Like Martin St. Louis has, and I'm not saying it's the flawed or the wrong way.
I'm not saying
Martin St. Louis. He plays.
I'm not bashing him.
No, I know, and neither I think we're both on the same page. We're both MSL supporters, but I can also say, I'm a big fan of two things can be true. Like you can be an MSL supporter, I can be one. I can see, the method to his madness. But the other part of the statement of both things can be true is, like most coaches, he defers to the safer choice, right? Like he defers to David Savard, veteran guy, shot blocking, unadventurous. Arbor Jacki, more adventurous, more unknowns. They trade for Alex Carrier because Justin Barron couldn't handle the workload. right? They want to spread out the offense. They don't want to load up. They want to have two number one power play units. And they're not going to take Juraj Slafkovsky off the top line, even though, one of the respected voices in the analytics community, Jack Hahn, who I always appreciate and enjoy his insights, suggests that Ivan Demidov should quickly replace Juraj Slafkovsky on the top line of the power play. How integral is Juraj Slafkovsky to that number one unit on the PP? Even though it's been struggling a little bit, peaks and valleys is what this team has managed to do all season long, and here they are over the line in the first round of the playoffs, so they clearly know what they're doing. Is that a sensitive area when we talk about the success and a young player of Slafkovsky's age to wonder about whether he could be leapfrogged by a guy like Ivan Demidov? Is that a sensitive area to the chemistry of this team in your view?
I don't think so. I think you need two very good power play units. And at 5-on-5, he's proven his worth. I think most of his points, if not grand majority of his points, came at 5-on-5 anyway. So I'm not really worried about that. But I think the issue is the Canadiens don't have the offensive depth to be able to play the game they want to play. And I think that's the issue. If the Canadiens had a legitimate second line center, no disrespect to a guy like Alex Newhook, if they had a legitimate second line center, then you would be rotating those two top lines, bang, 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 bang. And then on the power play, the Canadiens had faith in Ivan Demidov's shooting ability, then Patrick Laine would be on the second power play wave, because for all the good he does, and he does good. I'm going to state this right now because I don't want this coming back at me. He does really, really good on the power play when given the opportunity. In the playoffs, that shooting lane, there's going to be someone attached to Patrick Laine. This is the team that runs the power play with Alex Ovechkin in the same spot. They know what's going on here. So they're going to have a guy attached to Patrick Laine. Does that open up the ice for everybody else? Yes. The only problem with that is that Lane Hutson does not have the shooting ability that's going to drive the other forward higher up in the zone. They're just going to wait for him to make a pass because they know he's either just going to dangle around and pass it over to either Suzuki or Caulfield or Slafkovsky on the right side, leaving the entire left side of the ice completely open. So the only game the Canadiens are going to be able to do is that chip pass, that saucer pass between Slafkovsky at one post and Caulfield at the other as they go lower in the zone. And that has a low chance of working because they're going to, again, block the passing lanes. The only way to open a team like the Washington Capitals up is to move around on that power play, is to get them to move around on the power play and open up those passing lanes. And the only way that's going to happen is if you have five guys that aren't immobile on the ice. And with Patrick Laine, unfortunately, he's immobile in that situation. The moment he gets to the right circle, the way that the Canadiens use him, I'm not saying he's incapable of doing it, but the way that the Canadiens use him, he's just there. So nobody moves on the power play. You look at the second power play wave when they had Demidov, and all of a sudden all the guys are moving except Gallagher, who's constant in front of the net, but all the guys are moving around. Demidov's going left, Suzuki's going right, and it was dangerous. And it was by no stroke of luck. It's because when you move bodies and pucks, it creates chaos, and then you can overwhelm the defense and take the puck to the net. And then that's where you get your opportunities in the playoffs. Rebounds, chip shots, deflections. That's how it's going to happen. You're not going to score the pretty goal necessarily. So I'd like to see the Canadiens do more of that on both waves, and it may require them to move a guy like Patrick Laine, who, had almost the lead in power play goals in the NHL this year. I think he had like 16. And the lead, I think, was Gensel with 18. I think, when you look at it right now, very close, very, very close. Yes. So I wouldn't mind having that offensive weapon on the second pair because there isn't one right now. And I feel like Demidov is better.
Demidov's the better what?
Demidov is the better playmaker, the better dual threat.
I agree with that.
For fuck's sakes, I still have trouble saying that name.
That's a great name. Because when I hear that comment, I was thinking along fuck's sakes comments here too. I'm like, are you talking about splitting these guys up?
I don't want Demidov in Cole Caulfield's spot because Cole Caulfield currently plays the bumper. I would like to go to a system. I've been clear on this. I would like to see the Canadiens, especially for a guy like St. Louis who played for the Tampa Bay Lightning, so he knows this.
Yeah.
I would want them to go to that diamond formation that made the Tampa Bay Lightning so damn dangerous for years, where you had Lane Hutson at the point, where you have a guy like Cole Caulfield on the left-hand side, Demidov on the right-hand side. So they both have opposite shots for one-timers. Then you have Nick Suzuki in the bumper and Juraj Slafkovsky in front of the net, because for all intents and purposes, Juraj Slafkovsky's most of his good goals this season have been deflections, have been stuff that's bounced off of him. He's a big body with a long stick. He can do a lot in front of the net. And so to me, that setup is very akin to when Tampa had Hedman, Stamkos, Kucherov, point in the middle, and then you name it, Killorn or whoever else they wanted to put in front of the net. I feel like that diamond formation as your first power play unit would be deadly. And then if you have a second power play unit where if you have to double shift Nick Suzuki, double shift him. But then Alex Newhook is there, Emil Heineman. You have another shooting opportunity with Patrick Laine still there, and then Brendan Gallagher in front of the net. I think that's a recipe for success.
So let's talk about some of that. You brought up a name I'm very interested to pick your brain on, right? So as we know, as we've been paying attention, and if you've been paying attention to this channel, we know the Montreal Canadiens got paid off in a big way with their number one line of Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slafkovsky, right? 90 points for Suzuki and 30 goals, 37 goals and 70 points for Caulfield. Slafkovsky had a much more productive second half, finishes with 51 points. But what about the depth? Is this an area of strength going into game one Monday night, Marco? Brendan Gallagher, Patrick Laine, 20 goals. They broke that barrier. Josh Anderson, Alex Newhook with 15 goals. I'm more interested in your perspective on Josh Anderson and Alex Newhook and what you predict that these depth players are going to be able to do to get the Canadiens competitive in a battle of 8v1. Let's talk about those two guys specifically. Let's start with Alex Newhook and the quiet season he had. How integral is he going to be here to the Canadiens staying in this series with Washington, if not beating them in the first round?
He's going to have to get lucky.
Oh.
He's probably the most snake-bitten player on the team.
Yeah.
And that's saying something considering he had 15 goals. If he had even a smidgen of luck, he would have easily passed the 20-goal mark, in my honest opinion. And I think that's perfect for a future third-line center on this team. A left shot, which is outside of Christian Dvorak, pretty rare in the organization from top to bottom. So I think that they're really going to need him to use his speed, because one of the things in the regular season, it's one thing, but entering the zone with possession in the playoffs is worth its weight in gold. It's usually dump and chase city in the playoffs, right? Everyone's just dumping and chasing. And even that he could play, right? Because he can dump and enter the zone with so much speed that defensemen don't have the ability to either pivot and within their first two strides catch up, or skate backwards to try and catch him up. One of the only defensemen I think that could do that in the league plays with Newhook in Caden Gooley. That's what makes him so effective, is how strong he is in his backward skating. He can keep up with guys skating forward while he's skating backwards. So with a guy like Alex Newhook, I feel like he's going to have to use that, especially if Patrick Laine is on his line. He's a slower guy, but it opens up the ice for a guy like Ivan Demidov to do his thing. And I feel like that's going to be key, right? It's going to be very key. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. For the Canadiens to get past this point, if we want to talk about 2010, who were the Canadian centers in 2010? The top two centers. Scott Gomez, Thomas Plekanec.
Yes, correct.
And Thomas Plekanec was money for the Montreal Canadiens in that series, right? Let's all remember that first overtime goal against Jose Theodore in game one, right?
Yeah.
Absolute money, and played a shutdown role at the same time. Just incredible. If they had a Thomas Plekanec on their team right now, I would honestly say that this would be a toss-up in terms of which of the two teams would win. Yeah. But that's the type of center they'd be looking at. So I feel like that would be very important.
How about this question here?
Jake Evans, I was thinking about this as well. I think it's something to watch out for, because I feel like Lars Eller has the experience, but his game has dropped a little bit. Jim Dowd, however, is a just excellent bottom six center, just terrible to play with or play against. Sorry. Great to play with. And so I feel like that shutdown pair is going to be very, very tough on a guy like Nick Suzuki, because Nick Suzuki, not necessarily, like, obviously good speed, not blazing speed, but he's a guy that really does well by surprising the opposition with some of the intelligent plays that he does, just out of the box creativity, right? So I'm not necessarily worried about watching that matchup. What I would say, though, is that Lars Eller, as people have known, very good at possessing the puck, getting to loose pucks, bodying guys to separate them from pucks. And Jim Dowd's kind of the same way. So they have a bottom six that is built specifically to shut down and to counterattack. Got to be careful. But
so when go ahead, finish your thought.
I don't think Jake Evans and Christian Dvorak are going to play on the same line, right? Those are two centers.
Correct.
So
yeah.
I think their respective lines, as we talked about at the top of the live, I think the Canadiens are going to effectively have two shutdown lines.
Yes, like we have Evans, Armia, and Heineman together as a unit here, with Christian Dvorak being on the third line, and Alex Newhook moving up, and then all the way up to obviously to Nick Suzuki. One of the interesting points that had been brought up several times was how Washington's tactic is going to be to try to run the Canadiens out of the building. And a good first period team, a team that can bring the jam, a team that's going to try to push Montreal around. And as we saw in, I forget what game it was, where Josh Anderson beat the feathers off of Tom Wilson. Is Josh Anderson the answer to neutralizing the potential menace of a Tom Wilson in this series, Marco? Is Josh Anderson that guy that can bring the physicality to keep Montreal in it and not being the team that gets pushed, bullied around here? Or is that just too much for one man to take on here? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a lot to ask of one player. I think it's going to be team overall physicality.
Yeah.
One player that I think a lot of fans are sleeping on in terms of his physical presence is Jaden Struble. Well, that's one guy I implore you to keep an eye on. He is, one of the things I really used to like about him whenever it would get to playoff or bean pot in the NCAA was just how punishing he was along the boards. Like, good luck getting by him. He's very swift, very strong in his stick, but he will box you out. And when he gets you into the boards, it will hurt. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen a little bit of it now that he's gotten regular shifts over the last, I'd say, 15 games. I'm very interested to see what he's going to do in the playoffs, because another player that you don't know what you're going to get, because between him and Caden Gooley, the Canadiens are going to bring the physical nature. And I even say watch out for David Savard's hips as well, because he's going. I don't think he's naturally going to shoulder check anybody, but he's definitely going to back up into a couple guys.
Yeah, no doubt. As we wrap up today's live show, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 for the second half of our preview, and we'll give out our predictions. The National Hockey League playoffs open up tonight, this evening, with St. Louis and Winnipeg. Game 1 at 6 o'clock. At 8:30, it is Colorado and Dallas. Colorado and Dallas in the first round. There's something about that. That's the Western Conference Final. The Battle of Ontario gets going tomorrow. Yeah. Anyways, whatever. The fact that there isn't a Canadian team playing on a Saturday night, I mean, Winnipeg is, but they're playing at 6. Anyways, we'll move on to Montreal and Winnipeg. But I want to end this portion of today's show, Marco D'Amico, with the Ivan Demidov storyline. I know we've dipped in and out of 93. We talked about his number. We talked about his role here. I'm going to put it to you quite simply. I don't think there's a bigger X factor in this series than Ivan Demidov. I mean, I believe, based on what I've seen here, what's the number 2 for?
There's 2 X factors, one on each team.
So with Ivan Demidov and his skill and what we saw, am I wrong to think that if it goes right, this guy could be instrumental in we can point to him as the reason why the Montreal Canadiens won this series? Is that too bold to take for a 19-year-old that's played, let me see here, 11 plus 7. Let's say we'll round it up to 28 minutes in his career. He's played 20 minutes of NHL hockey. Yeah. I have this feeling. Is it too bold a feeling? I think he's the biggest X factor on the ice Monday night, end of sentence.
I think it's a pretty bold statement to make. I think that I would look like a Debbie Downer if I said no. Right?
Well, I think everyone's walk us through. Like I said before, this is an environment
where we can
create healthy debate and exchange of ideas.
I think he has the skill set to be that X factor. I think you got to give him. I think expecting him to be an X factor on Monday is pretty rough. I would say, like maybe give a game or two, but I think he could be an X factor in this series for sure. Right? Like if you remember Cole Caulfield, we think about his series against the Toronto Maple Leafs in 2021. He had the benefit of having played a couple games in the AHL, 10 games with Montreal, and then was inserted into playoffs a little late, in my opinion, but he was inserted into the playoffs and made a difference. I just
we've got Rangers fans. We have Rangers fans in the chat. They're all jealous.
I mean, listen.
Oh boy, the Rangers are here.
Yeah, I was about to say, when we have Rangers fans in here, I don't think the Canadians will. Like, how's Chris Kreider doing?
Yeah, dude. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Here, so that's for you, Chris. Here, that's for you, Chris Kreider.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, that is very much a Shaun Starr comment.
Here,
I'm not associating. I'm not associating with that. I just like the ribbing. When it comes to a guy like Ivan Demidov, a lot of people didn't think that he was going to have that much of an impact in the KHL playoffs. Ended up having a point per game performance. At one point was used 27 minutes in a game. So I am of the belief that when you come into the best league in the world, there's a little bit of hesitancy when it comes to NHL coaches just throwing these kids to the fire. That being said, I think the Canadiens are going to reach a point similarly to 2021 where they are going to have their backs against the wall in certain situations. And that is when you're going to see a guy like Ivan Demidov get an opportunity. And I feel like if the Canadiens have a snowball's chance in this series, he's going to have to be the X factor. And that's my prediction.
Yeah.
But this team will be carried by Nick Suzuki and Samuel Montembeault, my opinion.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. And I think, I don't want to talk about a 70-point guy and a 37-goal scorer, but Cole Caulfield's game has rounded out so well that there's another guy too that can make it happen in a variety of different ways. He's not a one-trick pony, Cole Caulfield.
Not anymore. No,
not anymore.
A lot of people have noticed it this year. He uses his body to separate guys from pucks. He's very aggressive in his forecheck. He's flipping sticks to get access to pucks quicker. I really, really, really enjoy the two-way game that Cole Caulfield has played. Agreed. And I think it's shown in the advanced numbers. Last year, that top line was getting caved in at 5-on-5. Caved in. Yeah. It was a power play line. And this year, they actually had very respectable 5-on-5 numbers. And I think a big part of that was that Cole Caulfield was not the defensive liability that he was in the early parts of his career. He's become a two-way forward to a degree. I'm not saying he's going to play on the penalty kill, but he doesn't hurt you at 5-on-5, and he definitely helps you in terms of the offense. So that's going to be important in a playoff setting where his speed is going to come into it, because now you have a 70-point winger in Cole Caulfield. Let's think about that for a second. A 70-point winger making $7.8 million for the next 7 years. Just brilliant, or 6 years. Just brilliant value for the Canadiens. And I feel like he's got that fire in him, that maturity in him, that's going to make him a sneaky player in this series.
One of our top fans, the president of the Rod Langway fan club, Rod, by design, I want to spend a good amount of time tomorrow live with Marco talking about Lane Hutson's utilization.
We're talking forwards here.
Correct. Obviously, he's a massive target. As we know, playoffs are all about matchups. You're going to play the same team a maximum of 7, a minimum of 4. So it is all about matchups. It's identifying problematic players that you need to neutralize, shut down, minimize how they're used and how they can hurt you. Lane Hutson, without a doubt, meets that criteria. And he will be a primary target for the advanced scouts of the Washington Capitals, how to get around him, what are his tendencies. And Marco and I will get into that. And listen, it's all good. It's more my fault. I didn't make it quite clear exactly what we were going to narrow in on today. But yes, we're obviously big Lane Hutson guys and understand what he brings to the table here.
And I think one thing that you brought up that's really interesting is going to the tape and tendencies and seeing how players play.
Yes.
I think that's another element that makes a guy like Ivan Demidov such an X factor, is because there is no tape on him in the NHL. As we talked about, he's played 28 minutes. That's not enough to develop a strategy. So there is going to be an opportunity where a guy like Ivan Demidov is going to be able to surprise if given the opportunity.
Dude, his hands, man. Like in my early days, right? And I've been in the media for a while now. And, I've never been a journalist. I've never been a reporter. I've always been a talk show host. It's what I do. It's who I am,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a couple of times I got assigned to cover Canadiens practice, right? Which is never my thing. I'm more of a personality than I am a reporter guy. And I went and covered Alex Kovalev for about a month and a half. A couple of things stood out to me that I've never forgotten. How big Alex Kovalev is in person, and I am not a small person. And I have never seen a better practice player in my life than watching Alex Kovalev. Nobody deked a pylon out better than Alex Kovalev. Nobody dipsy-doodled around teammates in a practice than Kovalev. It was artistry. I haven't gone to see Ivan Demidov in Brassard, but I see the highlights. I see the clips on Twitter. I see it from the various accounts that posted and the reporters that are there. Brother, this guy's hands, man, his edge work, his ability to go when in this direction, in that direction. Oh my gosh.
It's the
dude, it's
combination.
In a word, it's electrifying.
Yeah, exactly. He has two absolutely all world. I don't mean elite. I mean all world qualities to his game. His lateral skating and his hands. Just absolute insanity in terms of trying to be able to track that, trying to be able to stop that. Just really, really good in tight. And those kinds of skills are very transferable to playoff level hockey because you really have to make those moves really quick and in tight spaces. And I feel like that's where he's going to be able to distinguish himself from the pack. I definitely agree with that. The only difference I would say is that he imposes himself physically far more than a guy like Kovalev used to, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't feel like the effort is going to be anywhere near as hit or miss in his case. I know a lot of people will point to that one back check that he failed to complete against the Chicago Blackhawks. Yeah. I agreed. That could be chalked up to being tired. He said it himself. He was gassed in the second period. He was jet lagged, all those things. But I think he's far more devoted to the two-way game as well. So he's not going to hurt you, and he's definitely going to help you.
Marco, did you do your bracket?
Yeah, but I thought we weren't showing that off until tomorrow.
Okay, but you did one?
I did one already like a week ago.
Okay. Are you in the pool with everybody?
Not yet. I'm not home.
Well, no, I understand, but make sure you fill out your bracket, for the thing, so we can have some fun competition here and see what's going on. Because I was just looking now, we're up to 30 members in our free bracket challenge, and so you can see the link there. The link's right there, and you can enter the bracket challenge, and we'll obviously be live all playoff long, and we'll have prizes for our top 3 finishers. Before I let you go, and we say thank you for all the views and the likes and the comments today, and the tip jar is full. So thank you for that. Blues and Jets, Avalanche and Dallas, you got a take on what do you think happens here today? How big is this going to be for Winnipeg to win game 1 today?
It's going to be big, but St. Louis also has their own injuries, right?
Exactly.
So
yes.
It is what it is. I think that, the Winnipeg Jets are dealing with a couple of things as well right now. And I don't feel like any of those two teams are necessarily where they need to be. But one thing I will say is I don't feel like the St. Louis Blues, kind of like the Montreal Canadiens, I think they went and, really gave everything to try and make it. And you saw towards the end, they were starting to falter a little bit in terms of their performances. So I think it's going to be very interesting in regards to what happens. And for Winnipeg to win out that series, they're going to have to get regular season Vezina Hellebuck in the playoffs. Yeah. And that's the biggest X factor to me. If he is regular season Hellebuck, that is Winnipeg series all day.
So, before you move on to Colorado, Dallas here, is there a player in any series on either conference that has more pressure to live up to what they have done than Connor Hellebuck here? I mean, it's on the surface. I'm having a hard time thinking about it's Rory McIlroy at Augusta. You got to close this, big boy. He may win.
I mean, I
wouldn't vote for him for Hart personally, but he may win it.
No, I don't think he'll win the Hart. But one thing I will say is I don't think he necessarily has the pressure because he has gone distance in the playoffs before. What I will say, however, is with this core and where they're going, they got to be careful. They really got to. This is a make or break year for that core because, there's a couple of guys whose contracts are coming up. I'm thinking about Gabe Vilardi, for example, who may be a prime offer sheet candidate. And there's, with the rising cap, I don't know that Winnipeg is going to be able to continue to spend to the level of the rising cap, given their attendance and stuff. So what I will say is this is a prime opportunity to not only go above and beyond, but to make Winnipeg look like a winning team, so it could be a destination.
I gotcha.
But
but
the X factor to me on St. Louis is none other than Robert Thomas. Watch out for Robert Thomas.
Love that player. Love that player. And a quick thought here on Colorado Dallas that opens up tonight. That's the later game. St. Louis and Winnipeg, as I mentioned, at 6, 8:30 tonight. Dallas hosts game 1 and 2. Game 1 tonight at 8:30. Just a quick thought there. Ryerson is curious to hear your perspective on that series.
Yeah, I think if Dallas had a healthy Miro Heiskanen, it would be a different series altogether. Thought if Heiskanen, again, you're losing your number one defenseman. If Heiskanen was healthy, I think this is Dallas's series. Without him there, and the way that the Colorado Avalanche were able to rebuild or retool their roster on the fly this season, I've never seen that before. And they've clicked very well. The acquisition of Brock Nelson has been sublime. And then having a great third line center in the form of Charlie Coyle, they are stacked down the middle. And when Colorado is stacked down the middle, as we remember, they're a very dangerous team because on defense, they're great. They are good to go. You don't have to worry about them in any way, shape, or form on the back end. Cale Makar is going to be one heck of a playoff performer for them. Again, 30 goals this season. So the way I see it, if Dallas can get the offensive production, because Jason Robertson, if I'm not mistaken, is also injured and not playing in game 1. So with him out, I think it's Colorado's series to win. That being said, if they can get their top guys back, I think Dallas can push this to a game 7, and then we'll see what happens. But right now, it does not look good for the Dallas Stars.
Marco D'Amico, you can follow him on all your favorite socials at MN D'Amico. Don't forget, you can support this show by supporting our sponsors and making your pet's life more luxurious and more comfortable while also saving your household money. It's the Silver Paw Dog Everything Pet Warehouse sale event, up to 80% off at Gallery Day Source, with part of the proceeds going to support SPCA West. So it's awesome, right? You save money. Get your pet ready for next winter. Maybe if that's your thing, you want to get some raincoats, some sweaters, or jackets for next winter, and you can save a bunch of money on it now. Or maybe you need to upgrade their various beds around the house. I have 3 beds in my house for my one dog, and I'll be there because I want to save money. So those $300 beds you see in your favorite pet store, you're saving up to 80%. So we're talking about a $50 retail price now. And it's only 3 days, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at Gallery Day Source from 10 to 3. And thanks to Silver Paw Dog, we're going to try to get you in to win $200. Just click the link in the comments section and you enter your name, enter your email address, click yes, I want to win a chance to win $200, and you get that done through Silver Paw Dog. Marco D'Amico, enjoy your Saturday. You're going to be watching NHL playoff hockey. How do you navigate this? You're out of town. You've got obligations, but you also have hockey to watch. You got a lot of honeydew points to make up today, or what?
Yeah, but I also have 2 phones to be able to watch both games at the same time.
Whoa, easy with the flex. And the man's busy. The man's busy.
There's a couple of other games, such as Laval's last game of the season, the Laval Rocket, who clinched again the Kilpatrick Trophy. So they finished the President's Trophy of the AHL. They're playing their final game of the season against the Belleville Bills. Belleville Senators. Wrong time. And Tyler Thorpe, the Canadiens draft pick that recently signed his entry-level contract, is set to make his debut tonight, as they rest a couple of guys, such as David Reinbacher, who played one heck of a game last night as they clinched the Kilpatrick Trophy.
Yes. And as you saw, a bunch of people in the comments with their Shreky hands and everything else. That's our inside joke on the show because of the Shaun Starr Show merch website with 2 different styles of hats, and of course our 11-ounce ceramic mug for those Shrek fingers. It's dishwasher and microwavable safe, and you can order yours at the Shaun Starr Show and get it delivered the same day if you're in the Montreal, Laval, South Shore kind of areas. Thanks to our friends at Le Delivery Guy, and it is free shipping. And so you can take advantage. Just go to theshaunstarrshow.com and get your merch and rep it proudly for game 1 of the playoffs Monday night. Marco D'Amico, thanks. Enjoy the family. Enjoy your Easter. And we'll see you tomorrow right back here live at 9:30 Sunday morning as we give you part 2 of our Habs and Capitals preview show. Marco, thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Have a good one.
Peace.